I just got back from racing the Arizona Trail Race. It's an 800-mile race across the state of Arizona from south to north. So it starts at the border with Mexico and it ends at the border with Utah. And most of this race is single track, which is really, really cool. I was riding a Chumba Sendero and I set it up single speed. I ran 32.22 and that seemed to be a really good gear for me. The wheels I was running were Knox rims with a rear DT Swiss hub and a front dynamo hub, both built by Dan at Chumba. I chose to run flat pedals and hiking shoes on this trail since there's a lot of on and off the bike. There's also the Grand Canyon portage at the end of the race, and then I'd be wearing the correct shoes to be able to hike through the canyon comfortably. The pedals that I ran were Wolftooth waveform pedals. I really like these pedals because I feel like they support my foot really well with that concave design. I ran a Cane Creek Helm fork, which was a super fun fork to ride on that techie terrain. I had SQ Lab bars with Cane Creek bar ends and Wolftooth fat paw cammed grips. I find that this combination really helps to cut down on vibration and gives me enough hand positions that I don't experience hand numbness. I ran Magura brakes. They're super powerful, really ergonomic, and I felt like it helped my hands stay happy. I did end up fussing with them a little more than I would have liked. There's just kind of a learning curve on adjusting those brakes, and I'm still kind of learning how to do that. All my bags are dispersed bags. They're made by my partner Andrew and me. We make them in our van. We're also working on a workshop that will hopefully give us a little more space to make some bags still off-grid with solar powered. I carried an Osprey backpack with me. It got a little bit of the weight off of my bike during like the lemon push. I was able to take all the stuff out of my front roll and put it in my backpack so that I had a lighter front end for that section that was mostly hike-a-bike. So I brought a foam pad with me. I actually started with the foam pad inside of my backpack, but then ended up strapping it to the outside because it was just kind of a pain every time I wanted to refill water, trying to stuff that pad back in there. For tracking, I was running a Garmin InReach Mini 2 that I put on my backpack here, so it had a nice clear view of the sky. I charged it for the first time 700 miles into the race at the South Rim. Once I went through the canyon, that took a lot of battery, just since the signal was bouncing off the walls. So I topped it off one more time at the North Rim, and that got me, I only charged it up to like 20%, and I finished with like 15% battery left. This front pocket had toiletries in it. Oh, I stuck this in here. This was my phone that just had music on it. It's an old phone. It has really good battery life, and it lasted like a week before it died. I don't know that I would do that again. I'd probably just bring a bigger battery bank, but it was kind of nice to know that my music battery was separate from my actual phone battery, and I could just keep my phone off most of the time that first week. This smaller pocket here had my wallet. I always wanted my wallet and my InReach on me at all times, just for safety. If I got separated from my bike or whatever, I would have a way to contact the outside world, or if I was injured, hit my SOS button. In this top pocket, I carried a small bike lock. I used that whenever I went into a grocery store or a gas station, so I didn't have to worry as much about my bike. I also had some electronic cords that I kept in there, emergency aqua tabs, just in case my filter broke. In the main pouch of my backpack, I carried my rain jacket. This is a Patagonia, I think, Dirt Roamer, whatever their bike rain jacket is. So the hood fits over the helmet. It's a pretty substantial shell. I've tried other like ultralight rain jackets and I just feel like they wet through way too fast. And that thicker shell also offers a little more warmth that I knew that I would need when I got up on the Colorado Plateau. I carried my hiking poles with me the whole way. Sometimes people will mail their hiking poles or their backpack to the South Rim or to Tucson, but I didn't really want to fuss with having to pick up stuff at the post office. I think I got to the Grand Canyon on a Sunday, so the post office would have been closed anyway, so it was good that I carried those with me. I carried some emergency plastic bags with me that I got at the grocery store earlier in the race. These can come in handy if your toes get cold or you need to like stuff some extra insulation if your jacket's not keeping you warm enough. I didn't have to resort to that this time, surprisingly, but I wanted to have a couple plastic bags with me just in case. For the Arizona Trail, I carried most of my water on my back just to keep my bike light based on how much pushing of my bike I had to do. Having the weight on my body made it a lot easier to pick up the front end of my bike. I carried a bunch of extra belay straps. I needed these to strap my bike to my backpack when I did the Grand Canyon portage. Let's see, I had 5 extra, and I think I ended up stealing one from my front roll as well to get my bike all secure on my backpack. Want a snack? Here's a very smushed coffee cake, 450 calories.
Nice.
Man, I totally would have eaten that if I knew it was in my backpack. I have a little dry bag here that held my electronics and extra batteries. That's another thing that Andrew made for me with the dispersed. So let's see, I had 2 extra GoPro batteries. Here are a bunch of 18650 batteries. I brought 7 total. Those can power my light. I also have a battery pack that accepts these 18650s and turns into a power bank which can charge anything. 7 of these batteries was enough for me to charge my light, and the rest of my stuff I ran off of my dynamo, and then I would just plug in my phone whenever I got to a resupply. Okay, I think I'm done with my backpack. And my frame bag, I carried a Be Free. If I had it full of water, I would typically put it in my backpack, because if that one was full, that usually meant that my entire capacity was full. And I also had a 3-liter bladder in there. This is just a little protective sleeve, and I could fit almost 3 liters in here. I also carried this Nalgene on my down tube for an extra 1.5 liters. My total water capacity was 9 liters, which I needed to take from Tucson all the way up to Green Mountain Trail where there was a natural water source there. My top tube bag, it's empty now because it had snacks and I ate all of my food before I got to the border, except for that cake that I just found. In my rear bag, I typically carry like gummy candy and electrolyte pills and caffeine pills. This stim bag here was just space for extra food. It fit burritos or really anything pretty well. This other one had a water bottle in it. These feed bags also have a stretchy pocket here, and I typically carried my rag, and my chain lube is somewhere in there as well for easy access, so I remembered to leave my chain. So my front roll had this nice stretchy pocket as well, and I typically carried my GoPro in that, and it also fits like a bag of chips, and I could eat chips while I was going, and they didn't have to be crushed up. So inside of my front roll, I carried my sleep kit. I carried a tarp. It's a pretty minimal tarp, but it kept me dry like all during the Tour Divide when there was a bunch of rain. I fortunately didn't ever have to use this tarp, but it was necessary to bring a waterproof shelter just in case it did rain. Next I have a synthetic quilt. Andrew made this quilt. We originally made these synthetic quilts for our trip to Scotland because we anticipated a lot of wet weather, and the synthetic insulation still stays warm even when it gets wet. This quilt is rated at 30 degrees, so between this quilt and then my puffy jacket and rain gear, I felt comfortable to sleep down into the low 20s. I also carried my puffy jacket in my front roll. I usually stick a buff in the pocket because if I'm wearing my puffy jacket, that's usually the next thing that I have to put on. This jacket is synthetic for the same reason as the quilt. I wanted to have something that would stay warm even if it got wet. Last thing in the roll is a Bivy, also made by Andrew. It has a waterproof bottom and a water-resistant top with bug mesh over the face. So this Bivy keeps me a little bit warmer and breaks the wind. I feel like the bug mesh really helps with condensation. I only had one night where I had condensation. My rear bag mostly held extra clothing layers. So this is a custom fit dry bag that goes inside of this bag. I carried a wool short sleeve shirt. These are just like some short spandex shorts. I had 2 extra pairs of socks, and then I was wearing that 3rd pair. These are some waterproof mitts. They're actually designed for motorcycles. They have a trigger finger, and when I wore my wool gloves and these gloves, I feel like they were good into the 20s. I picked up some extra hand warmers when I was in Tucson based on the forecast at the North Rim, and when it got into the single digits and I could put hand warmers in there, my hands were okay. This is a pair of rain pants. I carried these just in case it rained, of course, but they're also a really good layer that I wore a lot of times at night when it was cold, and they kept my legs a little warmer. So the clothes that I was typically wearing most of the time were some lightweight pants and a lightweight long sleeve sun shirt. Last thing in this bag was a small first aid kit with some KT tape, Benadryl, Tylenol, and anti-diarrheal, and some antibiotic ointment, and some gauze, just some really basic first aid stuff. This is a sine wave beacon. It goes with my dynamo hub, and it's a light at night, and then I can also charge my devices off of it. For navigation, I had a Garmin Edge 1040 Solar. I ran that off the dynamo some of the time, but it gets like 100 hours of battery life, so I didn't ever have to plug it in between the solar power and the dynamo. It lasted me the whole time. I always carry a loaded tire plug tool on my handlebars for easy access. That way, if I got a puncture, I could fix that really quick before I lost too much air. I only had one puncture, but it sealed up on its own. I just had to pump my tires up just a little bit. I ran Maxxis Recon tires and ended up running 2.4s. I was a little bit torn between running 2.6s and 2.4s, but in the end decided to run the 2.4s since they're a little bit lighter. So I felt like the 2.4s worked really well for the trail. I wasn't really ever wishing for bigger tires.